Yes, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. My name is Miguel Londoño. Welcome to the session on climate change, migration, green jobs, security and peace, practical solutions and approaches from the field. I'm very honored and grateful for everybody's interest in this session, and especially to our panelists and our presenters today. I'm the Community of Practice founder and leader at GGGI on peace and conflict. I'm based in the Pacific, and I would like to welcome you all. We will start the session first with our short video from our President and Chair of the Assembly and Council, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon. Please go ahead with the video.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the 7th Annual Global Green Growth Week. I speak to you today with a sense of urgency because our one and only planet is facing a crisis of unprecedented proportions. The theme for this year, fast-tracking transformative climate action, underscores the grave and urgent situation. For many years, I have been emphasizing a simple truth about the climate crisis. There is no plan B because there is no planet B either. The opportunity to save the planet is not for the distant future. Now is the time. We need everyone to join and help tackle the climate crisis, and the policies and solutions need to meet the urgency and severity with boldness and innovativeness. The year 2023 was marked yet again with record-breaking temperatures and severe weather events. To keep global temperatures below the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold and avert the worst, we must act swiftly and boldly. Therefore, I'm proud that Global Green Growth Week brings together policymakers, thought leaders, investors, and innovators from the public and private sectors from all over the globe to discuss solutions to the climate crisis. And I'm also excited that there will be a special spotlight on young people and their pivotal role in a greener future. Much like the least developed countries and small island developing states, young people will be the most impacted despite having contributed to the problems the least. They therefore have every right to contribute to the solutions, and their creativity and passion will be invaluable assets. With the conclusion of the first global stocktake, discussions to operationalize loss and damage and other important issues, this year's COP28, which is just weeks away, will be critically important, and I hope the Global Green Growth Week will prove to be a helpful stepping stone to build momentum, hone ideas, and much more. The challenges before us are immense, but so is our collective potential. Let us seize this moment and work together to fast-track transformative climate action. Together, we can secure a safer, greener, and more sustainable world for ourselves and for generations to come. I wish you my best wishes for very productive discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ban. To open the session, I would like to invite our Regional Africa Managing Director, Mr. Male Fofana. Male.
Thanks very much, Miguel, and also distinguished guests and participants online. It's really great to see you there. And welcome to this opening session of Global Green Growth Weeks, where we will embark on the vital explorations of climate change, migrations, green jobs, peace and security. So today we gather to address interrelated phenomena born from the complex nexus of climate crisis, food insecurity, and growing security threat that have led to the displacement of population, leaving them without option for incomes, but also decent livelihood. These challenges underscore the pressing needs for integrative approach to create practical solution and approach in the field. The challenges we face are really fundamental and critical as climate change, migration, and its repercussions continue to impact life and ecosystem. Our session today, I think, will provide invaluable insight from some diverse settings in Africa countries and the Middle East as well, where organizations such as Global Green Growth Institute, the International Organization for Migrations, in the International Development Enterprise, are working tirelessly to deploy concrete solutions. This solution not only build resilience, but also create green jobs, improve lively conditions, but also livelihood for refugees, migrants, and host community, all while contributing to the restoration of ecosystem and the promotion of environmental peace building. As we delve into the essential of this discussion, we are honored to have our esteemed keynote speaker, Morgans, advisor for peace and security at IOM and UN Migration, whose expertise will shed light on the critical intersection of migration, climate change, security, and peace in Africa. Our session also will be fully moderated by Daniel, our Ethiopia country representative for GGI, a champion of sustainable and green growth. We also have the privilege to hear from distinguished panelists, including Christophe Asiko, our Jordan country representative for GGI, who will share insight on working on green job creation in Jordan for refugees and host communities. Rebecca Merfield, senior designer at International Development Enterprise Ethiopia, will present on utilizing human-centered design to develop green economic opportunity in forested landscape and southern Ethiopia. Additionally, of course, we will also have our country rep of Burkina Faso, Déthié Soumaré, will discuss building resilience in the Kaya-Dori axis. These presentations will serve as sources of inspiration and also practical solutions for our shared challenges. Finally, to wrap up, I'll proceed. We are honored to have Miguel, I think, who's just leading the community of practice on peace, conflict, and green growth program manager at GGI, who will provide a concise and insightful summary at the end. So ladies and gentlemen, this point is just to tell us how important is this subject, and the issues that we discuss today are paramount of importance for our collective future. Let us take this opportunity to explore practical solutions, share knowledge, and collaborate in our quest for a greener, more peaceful and secure world. Together we can make a difference, and I'm sure that we will make it. Thank you for joining us, but also for let us embark to this vital journey together. And I will welcome you to this session and wish you a productive one. Thanks everyone for joining. Over to you, Miguel.
Thanks, Male. I would like to invite David Arno, who's representing the International Organization for Migrations. Unfortunately, our colleague AJ Morton had a last-minute change of agenda, so David has generously agreed to step in for her, and we're very honored and happy to have you, David. He's the Senior Program Coordinator on Peace Building and Stabilization. I believe David is based in Iraq, and he has extensive experience in different countries. Welcome, David. We will post, if you want to introduce yourself, but we can also post your profile in the Q&A chat for everybody to know who you are. Please take us away.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, colleagues. And yeah, it's an honor to be here to speak on behalf of IOM, I think, and provide some keynote remarks on this intersection between mobility, migration, climate change, security, and peace in Africa, but also beyond, because there's a lot of commonality, I think, in other areas of the world and other regions, and a lot of lessons learned that can be applied more broadly. So just to give some background, I think IOM is the leading intergovernmental migration agency. So we are at the forefront of operational research, policy, and advocacy efforts around this intersection between climate change, environmental degradation, and mobility and migration. So through these efforts, we're really seeking to bring environmental migration to the heart of this international, regional, and also national level discourses in collaboration with our member states, our observers, partners, civil society. And we really adopt a system, community, and individual level approach to this. So we work at the systems level, the community level, and the individual level. Against that sort of backdrop and our role in that space, we've seen growing interest and concern, actually, around the linkage between climate change, security, stability, and development. Indeed, I would say it's widely acknowledged that climate change and environmental changes have the potential to cause multidimensional security and development risks. So I think framing this writ large, we can say the conversation around this issue has been growing significantly in recent years, from the United Nations Secretary General recognizing climate change as a threat multiplier, through highlighting that its interactions with social, political, and economic factors can exacerbate drivers of conflict and fragility and have negative effects on peace, stability, and security writ large. We also see in 2020 that SG explicitly placed climate change as a central aspect of the UN's prevention agenda, whilst the UN Department of Peacekeeping and Political Affairs reflected climate-related security risks as a primary priority in its strategic planning for 2020 to 2022. From my understanding, this has only grown. This was solidified in 2022 with the IPCC report confirming climate change's indirect contribution to increasing conflict via intermediary factors. And when we say intermediary factors, I'm talking about governance issues and other variables that interact with climate change to increase or amplify vulnerability. And most recently in Egypt in COP27, as the presidency, Egypt placed climate change implications for peace on one of the key agendas, launching the Climate Response for Sustaining Peace initiative, which IOM is part of, at COP27 in November 2022. So we really are seeing that this area of work and this acknowledgement of the importance of this intersection and the mobility dimensions to that are growing increasingly at the global level and at the regional level, and also within the Africa continent. In Africa, I think where climate events have undermined economic and political stability in some cases, the linkage between climate change and conflict can no longer really be debatable. Indeed, I think climate change is seen as an imminent threat to human security in some contexts, with the potential to reverse sustainable development progress and undermine peace. And I think often we look at this in the context of the immediacy of the effects of climate change in aggravating pre-existing situations, but actually we're looking at reversing development progress as well in some contexts, and where climate change is actively reversing our progress towards the sustainable development goals. So across the continent, we do see both slow and onset events, and we see that there's the potential to interact with political instability and conflict, governance issues, rapid population growth and urbanization, inequalities and livelihood insecurity, in different combinations of those variables to generate new types of conflict, and if not conflict, tensions at the local level, I think. So what's the migration and the mobility standpoint on this? Because I think we can clearly see that there's contributing or relationships between climate change as a potential threat multiplier or an aggravator of pre-existing issues in many contexts. But from the mobility perspective, we often see that different types of mobility also occur, sometimes concurrently, at the intersection between climate change and security. So food security, water security, environmental security, and livelihood security are all affected by the impacts of climate change and can influence different types of mobility patterns. It makes it really difficult actually to neatly classify movements into clear categories. It's not just displacement, it's not just irregular migration, it's not just chosen migration, orderly, safe migration. And I think acknowledging this, we have to say that any solution to the challenge or the challenges presented in that particular context need to look at the spectrum of mobility as a whole and not simply one dimension of mobility. And only a truly sort of holistic approach like this that factors in these really quite complex and intersecting dynamics and the mixed migration realities will engender an actually impactful response at the local level. For example, we see environmental stresses caused by climate change might exacerbate pre-existing tensions brought about by ethnic discrimination, socio-economic inequality, or poor governance. Climate-related security risks across the continent also have the potential to act as a future driver of increased instability and displacement. They have the potential to hollow out the social fabric of rural communities. If we see mobility from or displacement from rural centers to rural communities to urban centers, and potentially act as a catalyst for further displacement or further irregular migration. Climate-induced displacement itself has the potential to drive tensions as environmental migrants and displaced populations move from rural communities to urban centers, and that can strain additional resources if there's not effective preparedness in those spaces. So there really is, mobility is really quite a strong thread across all intersections of this area of work. And I think to understand this dynamic and the links between migration, environment, climate change, and security, we have to look through this wider lens of broader human security. And depending on the human security context, migration can either be negative, a negative response to adverse climate impacts, or actually an adaptation strategy. So I think from kind of giving that framing remark, I think sort of noting this, how does IOM support countries affected by conflict and fragility to address climate change and its potentially negative impacts on human mobility? So we have three sort of primary areas. Firstly, we provide support for people to move. So supporting efforts to manage migration in a context of climate change and enable people to migrate safely and regular mobility. And we're not talking about only just mobility to and from a location. We could be talking about circular migration, we could be talking about seasonal movements and so on, but allowing people to move in a safe and orderly way is one of the core areas of work that we support. Secondly, we provide solutions for people whilst they are moving, from anticipatory action to enabling solutions to minimizing and better addressing loss and damages, including displacement. So that's another area of work. And finally, we provide solutions for people to stay, making migration a choice by building resilience in communities that are affected by adverse drivers. This can be through adaptation action, through disaster risk reduction, and in contexts where conflict and climate change are intersecting, through improving conflict and resource management systems and structures at the local level. Overarchingly, we do look to better understand and leverage the value of mobility as an adaptive strategy. So in line with this, IOM's work in Africa and the Middle East as well, I'll talk to you because, as you mentioned, I'm based in Iraq at the moment. We have a range of projects that address this linkage between climate change, peace, fragility, and human mobility. I could spend a lot of time talking about that, but I'll pull a few key examples out, I think, just to kind of frame what we're looking at. So firstly, data-driven approaches. We really are looking at, with climate change impacting the routes and calendars, for example, of nomadic herders throughout West and Central Africa, we will support at the local level member states to develop early alert mechanisms and to reinforce local conflict mitigation strategies to preempt the risk of conflict associated with movements. We complement that at the regional level by engaging ECOWAS, its member states, the regional herder network, and national members, promoting multilateralism to ensure that ECOWAS remains the forum where international transhumance is managed in a harmonized way. We also developed studies that unpack this complex interlinkage and sort of research proposals that unpack this complex sort of interlinkage between climate change, conflict and migration, focusing most recently on Libya and Sudan as case studies. This particular study aimed to strengthen the knowledge and evidence base on the nexus of these elements and inform future policy programming. And through that, we developed what we call the Climate Change Conflict Migration Nexus analytic framework, which can be used in many countries and applied to many contexts to understand this complex interplay between climate change, environmental degradation, conflict, and human mobility. That framework itself looks at three particular elements and how they interact with one another. The first is environmental degradation, acknowledging climate change as one factor that influences the extent to which and the extent and rate of which environmental degradation occurs, but not the only factor. with the second element as conflict and the third element as migration and mobility. The data again shows that there is intersection and interaction of the three elements in a complex and non-linear way. And we need to acknowledge that it informs essentially our future programming. In other contexts, and I'm thinking in Iraq and Sudan at this point in particular, we work on implementing integrated programming that brings climate adaptation related activities and peace building community cohesion projects together from the onset in areas affected by climate change. For example, in Iraq, we're currently working with WFP, the World Food Programme, in support with support from the Human Security Trust Fund to map and leverage existing climate conflict mediation mechanisms and build peace building activities at the local level to manage resources effectively. And we also leverage our displacement tracking matrix and our quite extensive operational footprint on the ground to understand human mobility impacts of climate shocks. So DTM has more than 80 active data collection operations around the world, and we look at data on climate as a driver of human mobility. So in that context, we're working to advance data collection, analysis in order to enable us to better anticipate and the broader community understand and address climate-related human mobility issues. In 2020, we actually did release an analytical framework to consolidate data collection practices in contexts affected by climate change. And in closing, I will say very briefly that we have a few key areas to prepare for moving forward, I would say. First, we need to expand the evidence base on climate security mobility nexus to inform policy and programmatic responses. So this, for us, entails generating localized data that delves into the climate security nexus at the community level and better understands how this intersection is evolving, working with governments, member states, and partners to really understand and monitor climate security risks at the local level. Secondly, I think, and this talks to previous comments that were made, we must develop stronger coordination and planning mechanisms to enhance collaboration between the peace building, disaster risk reduction, climate, and development actors, where fragmentation still continues. And in line with this, we must continue to design quite comprehensive approaches and responses that build and integrate into existing peace-building mechanisms at the local level. Doing this, for us, necessitates enhancing our monitoring, evaluation, and learning from ongoing peace-building initiatives and creating forums for that coordination and collaboration to occur. We also see the importance of integrating conflict dynamics into the construction of climate change and the hazard profiles to respond to climate change. This integration will encourage and mainstream the conflict sensitivity and conflict analysis components of risk into risk analysis profiles, climate change policies, and vice versa, I think, as we're moving forward, creating a continuum of engagement as we're moving forward. To do that, it requires clear guidance, tools, definitions, and I think even the definition of climate security, there is no common consensus as to what this actually means, and approaches specific to programming responses. We also, fourthly, must ensure policy coherence and a whole of government and whole of society approach. It's critical, and I've seen in many contexts where we're operating, that there is no single entry point to respond to climate security issues, and it requires the identification of a range of appropriate policy and programmatic hooks in some respect to increase coherence across the humanitarian development and peace-building nexus and within government. Often the climate security portfolio is unique in that it cuts across security elements of government and civilian elements of government, and it can create silos where different parts of governments are operating concurrently but separately. Bringing that together to ensure coherence within societies and within government in its response and understanding of this problem set is quite critical. And then finally, the localization agenda, I think, is really important for us. We must engage subnational actors and civil society to respond to and mitigate climate-related drivers of conflict and be prepared and capacitated to address these issues as they're evolving. And with that, I will close. I hope I haven't gone over my time, but thank you very much.
Thank you, David. This is a lot to unpack and very informative, leading us to our presentations now, the block of speakers. So allow me now to introduce Daniel, our moderator. As Male mentioned, Daniel is the country representative for Ethiopia from GGGI, and he will be moderating the block of presentations just now. Daniel?
Thank you, Miguel, and I just want to welcome our audience once again to this, and Thank you, David, for that excellent opening speech that set the stage for the presentations that we'll be having from our three colleagues. Already, Dr. Male did introduce the presenters. We have Christophe, who is our country representative in Jordan, and he will be presenting on working on green job creation in Jordan for refugees and host communities. And we have Nado Seifu from IDE Ethiopia, and she'll be presenting a research related to utilizing human-centered design to develop green economic opportunities in forested landscape in southwestern Ethiopia. So this is one of our partners in our work on biodiversity. And finally, we will have Dechi Diaye, who will be presenting on building resilience in the Kaya Dori region. Dechi is our country representative in Burkina Faso. So I just want to welcome the panelists and just want to say we stick to our time, and I will give it over to Christophe to kick off the presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Daniel, and then greetings from Amman, everybody. Let me just share my screen first. All right, is that okay, Miguel, everybody? Yes, thanks, yeah. Okay, I'll just take a few minutes to introduce the project we have prepared for the past 2 years here in Jordan, and started implementing in June this year. So the name of the project is Creating Sustainable Green Jobs for Refugees and Host Community through the Green Economy in Jordan. My first slide, it's about the refugee situation in Jordan, which was the basis of the design for this project. But before I start on the map, let me just mention that it's a $6 million project over 3 years, co-financed between GGI and the Korean government. So as you can see from the map here, Jordan is in a specific geographic situation. It's really like a stable oasis among countries that have experiencing some difficulties in the past. For example, the Syrian Republic in the north, Israel, Palestine in the west, Lebanon, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. There are now around 1 million refugees in Jordan, mostly in the northern parts of Jordan. As you can see here, the different governorate or provinces that host the most refugees are in dark blue. So 1 million refugees compared to a population of around 10 million, that makes it one of the countries with the highest rate of refugees compared to the total population in the world, basically. And at the same time, Jordan is facing a different challenge, which is the high unemployment. There is around 24% of the population is unemployed in the country. This is, however, people are it's very qualified, but still there is high unemployment, and it's exacerbated for more vulnerable population. For example, the rate goes up to 30% for the youth, the younger population of Jordan, and to even up to 55% if we're talking about male refugees, basically. So in this context, high refugee population and high unemployment, we have designed this 3-year project And my next slide is an overview of the three main components of this project. Here is the outcome one. So first, we want to understand and collect data in details on the situation for employment, green employment, the awareness, and we also want to help the government to design an action plan. So the first is to what we call evidence-based, to design an evidence-based action plan for green employment. We have three output on that. The first one has started now. We are designing and preparing a green employment analysis report to understand where are currently the green jobs in Jordan and what are the sectors where the potential for green job creation is the highest. We are looking at specifically 6 sectors in priority. And this is based on the National Green Growth Plan that was developed over the past years by the Ministry of Environment, including with the support of GGI. This National Green Growth Plan focuses on 6 sectors mostly. So we have water, agriculture, transport, waste, tourism, and energy. So these are the, more specifically, the sectors we will be looking at. But we've also decided, based on consultation with more government agency, we will be adding the ICT sector, information technology, and also the education sector. In parallel to this first output, we will develop a capacity development training, because for the simplest reason that there is very little awareness on what is green job, what do we mean for green job, especially in government agencies. So we will do, and we are starting to do actually capacity development training aiming at government agency on green jobs. And based on that, based on these 2 outputs, we will help the government to develop their own action plan to enhance and enable the green employment in Jordan. This is mostly like a research first outcome. The second outcome is that we want to focus on job seekers and improve, enhance, I would say, their employability. So we will deliver trainings on green skills development and awareness. And we are aiming to target 1,000 job seekers in total, with 50% women, 50% refugees, and 25% youth. But in order to understand what types of training modules we will develop and we will focus on, obviously we will use the results from outcome 1, but we are also doing a skills gap assessment. What we call a skills gap assessment is to understand where what is the full scope of green jobs in each sector, specific to Jordan. So we go through each sector and we try to understand, from based on a supply chain analysis, from the design to the operation of energy plant, for example, what are the jobs that could be considered and classified as green. After that, we do a survey to job seekers and businesses to understand where are the gaps between the supply and demand of green jobs. What are the qualifications of the job seekers, including refugees, etc., and what is the demand from businesses, basically. Based on that, we will define our training modules. We will then select participants from next year and deliver the training. Then very briefly on my last outcome for this project, not only we focus on job seekers, but we will also focus on green business green businesses, sorry, and green entrepreneurship. It means also here three main outputs. The first one is to deliver design training modules and deliver training to green entrepreneurs. So only people that are not yet started to create their businesses, but have an idea to develop green businesses. This module will focus on soft and hard skills and will also include some basic business administration management modules, basically. The second one, 3.2, the Green Business Incubation and Acceleration Programs is aimed at businesses that have already started. Incubation, which the business that needs a little push and a little bit more structure to achieve their goals and to be more sustainable. Whereas the second one on acceleration, it's a program that is slightly more advanced. We are talking here existing businesses that have already been existing for a few months or a few years, and that we will have to accelerate again through potentially help them to design a more innovative business model, or more on the business administration side. And for this business model innovation, we are able to build upon the different green entrepreneur programs that have been under development and under implementation at GGI for the past few years. We have, for example, one large-scale green entrepreneur program in the Caribbean, one in the Pacific, and several others at country level. So from this program that are already at a later stage of implementation, we will be able to also learn lessons and apply business models that have shown results in the green sector. And then finally, for sake of time, the last component will be an online green business incubation and acceleration platform that will be hosted at the Ministry of Labor within the existing website of the Ministry of Labor of Jordan. I understand I've been just a little bit above time, so let me finish here. This is a brief overview. You feel free to post your question, or Daniel, maybe we'll have also more time at the end. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Christophe, for that excellent presentation. It is amazing what is this project or program is doing for refugees and their host communities. When you look at the outcomes, it shows that there is quite a lot that could be achieved in the coming years. And I do appreciate you presenting this, and also encourage our participants to drop their questions so that Christophe can come back to give a little bit more details. Now we are going to move to our next presenter, Najat Seifu, who is the Research and Design Assistant from IDE Ethiopia. Like I said in the beginning, she'll be talking about utilizing human-centered design in developing green economic opportunities, especially in the forested landscape project that we are working on here in Ethiopia. Over to you, Najat.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel, for the introduction. I would like to welcome all participants, speakers, and guests who are attending this session. So let me introduce myself. My name is Najat Seifu. I'm presenting on behalf of my colleague and partner, Rebecca Merrifield, who couldn't meet today due to unforeseen circumstances. So jumping into a little introduction about what IDE do, and specific the project we're collaborating together with ECFF and Green Growth, Global Green Growth Institution. So IDE is an organization which works with, especially with rural communities, which is aimed at increasing them and empowering their various activities related to entrepreneurship and linkage to markets, and also creating these income-generating activities to promote sustainable development and growth. So we really So we focus on empowering entrepreneurs, which has many factors related to the current challenges that the youth, community, the women are facing. So we believe that entrepreneurship is a core solution to the challenge we're encountering as a whole world. So entrepreneurship would be our goal to end poverty. This is a specific approach we use, which is basically one, we see the customers or the clients or the communities as clients and entrepreneurs, that they should be aware of the opportunities they are grasping, and they are the first heroes who act on the ground, tackling many changes. So we have this mindset that they're not here for a free handout or as a state of beneficiary, but they're here to just promote a product and to deliver services, because considering Ethiopia, where 86% of the population is dependent on agriculture and also other activities. So this large part of the community is aware that they are entrepreneurs and they can do new things and they can provide solutions to their. So this is our concept regarding IDE. And the project we're currently working on is called the Sustainable Conservation and Sustainable Management of Forestal Landscape in Ethiopia. So our partners in this project are GGI and ECFF. And the project is currently conducting on the southwestern part of Ethiopia, which has a rich biodiversity and also a greater coverage. Currently, it's facing a challenge towards that rich biodiversity and forest resource. And the basic factor for that will be climate change, lack of available income generating activities other than utilizing forest resources, and also has some gender components. So going forward to the design process that we use to understand the community's perception and need for change is called human-centered design. So as its name depicts, it is centered on the human behavior. We emphasize on questions like, why do people tend to do the practices on the ground, and how are they doing it? So within this approach, we kind of come up with this solution-focused approach. With this solution-focused approach, we address the end user and what would be the possible solutions for that, and also what challenges are on the ground. So we do this through empathy mapping. There is a process called empathy mapping, which is empathy-based, which is figuring ourselves on the ground on behalf of those communities. So this helps us to understand why, what is the reason behind that the community is dependent on certain activities, and regarding this project, why are they utilizing forest resources, and why can't also they have other alternatives to generate their sustainable income. So having this extensive kind of research, which is on the field and experiential activity, we're able to understand what the community perceptions and motivations are. The unique perspective about the design process is iterative, it's continuously changed, because as we all are aware of the global community and the global activities that we're encountering in our daily lives, nothing is permanent or static, everything is dynamic. So we can't propose a single solution to multiple and seasonal problems and variations that the community or we as a world are facing. So human-centered design approach is more flexible and more context-based. So it doesn't generalize a single solution to a wide range of problems. The other component is creativity. So in creativity, what we mean is that we're not the solution providers for the community. In turn, the community is also a solution provider. So we don't work for the people. What we do is like the people are part of the solution. So we are within the people and we work together with the people. That makes it a very insightful and learning progress for the organization, also the community as well, because we co-create and also come up with these viable solutions for common problems, because as we are also part of the community, we're able to understand and learn the type of behavioral change, mindsets, and also various problems on the ground that the community and also part of the organization is facing. So the other specific thing is like, we don't, as I mentioned earlier, we lead with the people. That makes us to be a core part of the community. It strengthens our relationship with the community, and the community also become part of the solution. So it will eradicate the behavioral mindset that some organization or some specific body will solve our problem. No. So you are the solution makers, because you are the first actors for the problems, or you're tackling on the ground whatever the problem the world or the globe or is facing now. So since this, we have a specific approach to answering this, or to coming up with a solution that the community is facing. It's called the how might we approach. So in how might we questioning or approach, we do not set a problem. We kind of create a matrix that how are these problems be turned into an opportunity in an inclusive manner. So specific to this project, the how we question would be raised according to how might we create a viable and sustainable income generating opportunities, while at the same time conserving the biodiversity and resources of the forest. So our intention was that to make it inclusive and as well as specific, context specific, because there are a lot of challenges on the ground, but how could we minimize the challenge of reduction and exploitation of forest resources relating to the income generating opportunities that might create viable metrics and a roadmap to a better solution. In doing so, in the human-centered design process, we have different lenses or perspective of seeing a solution. When a solution is proposed from the community and also the design team together, evaluate, is it feasible, is it viable, is it desirable, is it climate smart, and is it inclusive? So the 5 basic lenses kind of merge together to test and also to just come up with a solution which fits the specific context. So in desirability, what does the community specifically want or need? And does it need feasible? Is there a potential to practically implement it on the ground? And from feasibility, we go up to viability. How viable is this? How sustainable is this? Especially viability linked with economically viable, because people might suggest a desirable solution, which can be also feasible, but in a long term, if it doesn't solve the financial limitations that the community is facing, it might get halt or disrupted. At the same time, it should also be inclusive, because IDE is mainly working with women and youth communities, because they are the 2 potentials in Ethiopia which can contribute a lot to the larger society. The other one was this related to the climate component, is like any solution depicted cannot have a negative impact or a negative output to the environment, so that the climate smart component would promote a circular economy. What could be utilized as a waste or as a toxic could be creating this circular economy that it might also feed
Sorry, Nados. Yeah, if you can go to your last part, because we are running out of time.
Okay, thank you. So by doing so, we conducted those features and come up with the viable solution. This is also depicted from the communities themselves, because as I myself was also a part of this research, and we asked the community what is considered waste in your locality. Aside from utilizing the forest resource as an energy resources, they burn a large amount of coffee husk within the community, which leads to a large emission of carbon and also causing health effects and also degradation of the environment. So as a solution, we came up to these eco-friendly solutions that the users and women and also the community could utilize as income-generating activity, as well as conserve the forest at the same time. So the first thing we depicted with the coffee husk, so this could be arranged or molded into pellets and compost compositions. And also most communities in the southern part of Ethiopia depend on the forestry for energy production. So we promoted various clean energy saving cookstoves. So this is the result or the outcome of the research we conducted using the human-centered design. So by this, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot, Nados, and sorry for hurrying you. I have just put on the slide that we'll be happy to share the slides with the participants so that there will be a follow-up discussion. So without wasting a lot of further time, I invite the country representative of GGGI in Burkina Faso, Deti, for his presentation.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Okay. Good morning, everyone. This presentation focuses on actions we are currently undertaking in North Central Burkina Faso to strengthen community resilience to climate change. But we will also look at how the issue of conflict sensitivity very quickly came to the fore. The presentation is structured around 3 items. First, some background information on the country, Burkina Faso. Then the objective and the approach we used. And finally, how we came up integrating conflict sensitivity due to fragility. Next slide, please. To set the scene, let's recall that Burkina Faso was already facing structural challenges, developmental challenges, as Burkina Faso is a least developed country, a Sahelian low-income country where 40% of the population live below the poverty line. With a rapid population growth, 65% of the population is below 25. And the country ranks 184th out of 191 countries on the UNDP HDI report 2021-2022. But the country is also heavily impacted by climate change. It ranks 161st out of 185 countries on the NDGAIN index. And this situation has been exacerbated by the rising threat from terrorism and extremism, resulting in important displacement of population. We had 1.8 million IDPs, internally displaced population, in December 2022. But also human and material damages, including community infrastructures and facilities. Consequently, large parts of the country are facing a loss of social cohesion and the deterioration in community life, as well as an increased vulnerability, making it easier for terrorist groups to recruit children and young people, including girls. Next slide, please. It is against this backdrop of extreme fragility that GGGI, with support from COICA, developed this initiative aiming to strengthening resilience and sustainable livelihoods based on a strong, green, sustainable, and inclusive growth. To promote an inclusive and sustainable growth in these areas, we are using the triple approach: humanitarian, development, and peace building. In other terms, responding to emergency needs, supporting recovery and resilience actions, and then enhancing social cohesion and living together. The expected outcomes are as follows: providing access to safe drinking water to 18,750 internally displaced population, supporting with food assistance 3,750 people, including 2,000 women, developing integrating, let's say, green growth principles in 3 local development plans, and developing 200 income generated activities and 100 rural green micro enterprises in these areas, establishing 5 community gardens for healthy diet, installing 250 clean solar cooking system and 25 solar pumping systems for irrigation, and converting 250 hectares of degraded land into sustainable land management, and finally training 200 people on governance of green growth and social cohesion. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. Although the issue of conflict sensitivity was not really taken into account at the outset of this project, it very quickly became clear to us as soon as we started our activities. 2 villages in our intervention zone that had been spared until then came under attack, resulting in death among soldiers and civilians, as well as significant material damages. We had to revise our strategy by integrating conflict sensitivity in our approach, revising our context analysis and undertaking a training of our staff and a coaching by Peace Nexus, adapting the project intervention strategy to enhance positive impact and reduce negative effects on social cohesion and peace, monitoring and capitalizing to internalize the approach, but also setting up an effective monitoring and evaluation framework to internalize the approach and to document, package, and share lessons learned. It's a new experience, of course, but also and above all, an approach that is now essential for intervention in these regions, which are facing the challenges of both terrorism, vulnerability, and poverty. We look forward to sharing more lessons learned from the implementation of such an approach. As for now, I remain available along with the team responsible for monitoring activities on the ground to answer any question or comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deti, for the excellent and brief presentation. This is an important project for the fact that when you look at the triple nexus of humanitarian development and peace building, it is an area that affects the lives of people, not only in maybe IDPs, but also in everyday life. So we are happy you are bringing this on, and like I've put in the chat, we encourage the participants to send their questions as well as engage onwards. As we are moving towards wrapping up, I will now call on Miguel Londono to give us closing remarks. Over to you, Miguel.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you to all presenters and to all our participants for joining today. I think we'll have a great overview at the start from our IOM colleague. He emphasized on the importance of evidence-based conceptual clarity, coordination, and local perspectives. And after he presented, I think we saw very concrete examples from Jordan, from Burkina Faso, from Ethiopia. And I'm very happy to see that GGGI is growing the field of work in this space with partnerships, growing partnerships with COICA in Sweden. So I think Christoph's presentation made the point, how can we create green jobs based on evidence, based on what the local market can enable, and learning from different experiences that GGGI already has on green entrepreneurship. I was also very, very happy to see our colleagues from Ethiopia having a human-centered design methodology, resulting in very concrete solutions to the coffee value chain and how that can help the local community resolve key questions. And finally, Burkina Faso, the human development peace building nexus. And most importantly, what I would like to emphasize and congratulate the Burkina Faso team is because they're champions on conflict sensitivity now in GGGI. They're progressing very well with capacity building with the Peace Nexus Foundation. And we have other champions here, Daniel and other country representatives in Africa that are championing this conflict sensitivity agenda. Ethiopia is also doing a deep dive on what that means for their context. And I know other countries will do the same. So I'm very happy to see that GGGI's portfolio is growing. And I'm also happy to announce that we also signed an MOU with the World Food Program recently in the Climate Summit. And we will soon sign also an MOU with IOM because we understand that GGGI's mandate is on climate, and we can partner with other institutions that are good at complementary work so we can provide integrative solutions to this complex problems where climate crisis, climate change, everything overlaps. So we need to work together, and that's why I think I would like to emphasize that what Male mentioned. Together we can do a lot more. So I'm very much looking forward to the partnerships, the growing partnerships with KOICA, with Sweden, World Food Program, IOM. And yeah, this is something that the community of practice that we have at GGI is happy to support. So I think we are now finished. We have run out of time. Thank you everybody for attending today. Wishing you wherever you are a good week, a good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever that is. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.